Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief at The Contrarian. I'm delighted to have back one of our star contributors, Andrew Weissmann. Andrew, welcome back.
So great to be here. Although not once again, not happy to
Exactly.
be here for this topic, but I'm happy that you're covering it.
Oh, well, thank you for that part. Let's start with a piece that you wrote for Just Security today, talking about the Eric Adams proceedings. Explain to us why what happens next is so important for the Justice Department and for the rule of law.
The government is moving to dismiss without prejudice, meaning they could bring it later. And there's this concern about a quid pro quo. In other words, that they're getting something from Mayor Adams. This is why I think it's so important. I think for the judge here, he has to decide whether the Department of Justice's position, as stated in court, which is that even if there's a quid pro quo, they denied that there was one, but they said even if there was, there's nothing wrong with that. We can do it. This is what that means, that the Department of Justice, under the guise of prosecutorial discretion, can use a criminal indictment to bend somebody to their will, even a politician. So it can be, you have to support our policies. Imagine a member of Congress where the bending to the will was you have to vote our way. Or to take another extreme example, I'll dismiss the case without prejudice so long as you pay me $50,000 in cash. All of those are quid pro quos. The point being is, I'm not obviously saying that this falls into the quid pro quos of my hypotheticals. It's that it can't possibly be the case that the law is that you're allowed to do any quid pro quo. And that is why I have my eye so much on this case and what the judge is going to do here. Because if you think that things are bad now, if this case goes awry, and the judges aren't attuned to what exactly the department is saying they can do, they're going to get a whole hell of a lot worse.
Would it be possible for the judge to decide, okay, government, you want to dismiss this case? It's dismissed with prejudice. Does he have that discretion? And what would that do to short circuit this entire charade?
Yeah, he does have that discretion. There's very limited discretion under the rule that he's operating under. He could have that, and that would take away the sort of Damocles, or as I've termed it, the choke chain that's been put around the defendant. And also, even taking Pam Bondi at her word, which is she just a few days ago said, this case essentially is garbage and it was political and it should never have been brought and it's incredibly weak. Well, if that's the case, you should just dismiss it. I mean, you don't try and get something for it. If it's a case that you think shouldn't have been brought, you don't sit there and say, now I want to see whether I can leverage the defendant over it. So yes, he could move to dismiss it with prejudice. And so, I mean, so you could grant that relief. He also could have a factual hearing. So I've posited this issue of like, is there a quid pro quo? But he could hear from and hear actual evidence. And that could be without prejudging, it could go the way of the government that there's no quid pro quo, but it could also go the way of Danielle Sassoon, who said absolutely this was tantamount to a quid pro quo. I'm particularly interested in the notes that Danielle Sassoon said that her team was told not to take and were confiscated by Emile Beauvais at that meeting. You don't confiscate notes because they're good for you. It's not like he's thinking, oh, I need this record. He purportedly didn't deny that he did that. He says, I did it because I wanted to avoid leaks. That I think doesn't pass the straight face test because, as as a reporter, you can leak by just picking up the phone and talking. You don't need to have notes. Notes are just a way of showing whether what you said is consistent or inconsistent with contemporaneous documentation.
Well, this is like if it were a comedy, it would be a comedy of errors of how to look like you're guilty of doing something improper. But be that as it may, kudos to Judge Ho, who's the presiding judge, for calling the hearing, appointing Paul Clement, a highly, highly respected
Yep.
Supreme Court advocate, to argue the case, since the government and presumably Eric Adams are on the same side asking
Right.
for the dismissal. But frankly, Eric Adams' attorney should be asking for a dismissal with prejudice, I would think. Let's move on to the latest outrage from the FBI, for which you were previously the general counsel. Kash Patel, who was bad enough, named as his deputy Dan Bongino. How bad is this? And how foolish do the United States senators look, having taken Kash Patel and Pam Bondi at their word that they were going to put in a seasoned professional in this critical number two role at FBI?
Well, I'm praying that it's not as bad as all signs are that it's going to be. But I for the sake of the Bureau and the sake of the public, I want it to be successful. You have two people with a grand total of zero experience working at the FBI. Having seen those people up close, you have to motivate people. You have to get their best work. They have to feel supported and appreciated for what can be grueling hours under really difficult circumstances. You have to also know how the Bureau works. You have to know how investigations work on the criminal side and the national security side, and that you have to have deep knowledge of that because one of the things you do on the seventh floor is you catch mistakes. You help gear things the right way, and you see that over and over again. I've told this story in the past, but on the national security side, the thing that was remarkable to me was how much the experienced intelligence agents were able to separate the noise from the real threats. And that is an art. That is not a science. There is so much data coming in. Having inexperienced people I mean, this is not a learn on the job position. Now, I'm hoping they still surround themselves with the right people, but I have to say, if you really, really cared about your mission and the Bureau, at least one of these people would have that background and be able to provide that guidance, and you'd want it. I mean, presumably, you want the agency to be as effective as possible in carrying out your own agenda, your own principles and policies. So that's why I'm just so skeptical that the idea here is to actually not have it work, to have it dismantled, to not have it be effective. And to me, it's like it's disrespectful of the Bureau, it's disrespectful of Congress, and disrespectful of the public. And disrespectful is pretty much a mild term. Even though I'm a New Yorker, I try not to curse, but like internally, I am.
One of the things that these two people have in common, Kash Patel and Don Bongino, is that they're both election deniers. And this is really doubling down on one of the most heinous charges and heinous conspiracy theories that Kash Patel carried. Does this then send the message throughout the Bureau that you're not going to get anywhere in this Bureau unless you adopt this posture? Is this way of kind of signaling you better comply with the party line, which is this fantastical lie?
I mean, it can be that, but it also can be just a complete resistance that people are going to feel to doing their best work or working very hard, because there can be reasonable minds can differ, and you can have agents who play devil's advocate and are thinking, "I don't have enough," and "Do you have enough?" And that can be incredibly valuable to have that. But here, agents are trained on facts and law. That's their bread and butter. And also, they go to court. They see that that is what you need. They have been cross-examined. They've had judges ask them questions. They've had prosecutors ask them questions. So I don't see how this works. And those conspiracy theories, they may be good and well on the political stage or in a podcast, but that's not where this is going to end up. This ends up in a court of law. And so one of the things that is where the rubber's going to hit the road is we've already seen when Trump was an election denier the first time around, there was no decision on the merits in his favor. I think there was one out of 61 cases that ruled in his favor on something that was procedural. And so I just don't see how this is going to work unless those people really change their stripes. And I don't see that. I don't see them being put there to change their stripes. I mean, that is, you don't put people like that in that position thinking they're going to change.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought Kash Patel was going to put a career professional in this role. If you're the United States senators who voted for him based upon this representation, shouldn't you be hopping mad and call him back to testify under oath and ask what the heck he's doing?
Add that to the list, Jen, of things that the Senate, if their spine still were intact, would be doing. And they still have, I think Todd Blanche has not yet been confirmed, and he is being considered for the Deputy Attorney General position. Just to be clear, so everyone knows, the FBI is a part of the Department of Justice. A lot of people aren't aware of that. The director of the FBI, and of course, the deputy director of the FBI, the person they report to is the Deputy Attorney General. And so one of the things they could do is they could ask all of those questions of Todd Blanche. Like, how did this happen? And that we now have somebody without this experience, and who else will be there to shore it up? And how did it happen? Whose decision was that? Because it sure seems like it is coming from the White House rather than Kash Patel, which itself is, an important signal.
It is. And I think just when you think you've hit rock bottom, you realize there is no bottom for these people. And they're
None.
Absolute contempt for the institutions and really disregard for the safety and security of the American people. There are many functions that government does that do not relate to the life and death decisions that happen with the FBI. And something can go very, very wrong. And the Senate and the president and Kash Patel are going to have no one to blame but themselves. So thank you, Andrew, for hanging in there and keeping your cool during all of this and explaining it to us. And we'll have you back, I'm sure.
Well, thank you very much. And I know that I think you're making the right point about the big picture. As somebody, though, who worked at the Bureau, my heart goes out so much to the career men and women, agents and analysts and staff there. They deserve the absolute best leading that agency. And I know the public deserves that as well. But these are people who are career people who give up so much and think public service is so important. And this is it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with if you think that we should be doing more drug cases and less, X cases and more Y cases, that's fine. But as long as they're responsible, thoughtful people, that's what the agency deserves.
Indeed. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.